Guys, I think the EW200 might be in a bit of a trouble. So, Kefine Delci, I've heard great things about these and they sound pretty nice. They graph and sound very similar to my EW200 and the RDR2. And at first I thought, the small differences between them really just came down to QC and unit variance, because my first EW200 actually graphs pretty close to it, whereas my second unit is a lot brighter, and I'm assuming the second version of my EW200 is what people meant when they said, the EW200 is a bit too shouty. And after looking at the graphs of the other Delci's versus the EW200, all of them do have more bass and less bright in the upper mids versus the EW200. So it's safe to say that with the Delci, you will be getting a bassier and warmer version of the EW200, which I dig. As for the overall sound, the Delci is smooth and warm leaning. It's another Harman, it's more bassy and less bright than the EW200. The low end is punchy with a good amount of mid bass slam. It has good authority to the low end, and the deep sub bass is very rumbly. It has more sub bass than the EW200, and it's got that slightly warm feeling to it without becoming overly congested and too warm and too bass heady. In terms of overall low end emphasis, the Delci is more in your face with the bass than both the EW200 and the RDR2. It reminds me of the BLONs at 300 actually, but more on that later. And the upper mids is also tamer versus my second unit, less shouty for those who found the EW200 too bright, and everything else sounds correct and good because, well, it's Harman. Based on my unit of the R2 and the Delci is slightly more V-shaped version of the R2. They're a little bit more energetic, more engaging overall, and I do prefer the Delci as like a better all-rounder over the R2 because it's just more engaging, more bass, a little more treble. But I do still think the R2 is great if you want something more balanced, not as in your face, a tamer and cleaner sound that's better for like vocals and mids. So the R2 is still very good. Now tech wise, all three are basically the same in terms of resolution, with maybe a slight edge to the EW200 for the imaging because it is brighter in the upper mids and the attack of the notes feel sharper as a result of the treble and upper mids boost. Overall though, going off my second unit of the EW200, which seems to be the one that most people are getting, or at least like some are getting, right? There is enough difference between all three of them that I think it's still worth it as a side grade to the EW200 and the R2. In this case, the sim glass would be the brightest, the R2 would be like sit in between bright and warm leaning, like neutral, I guess more balanced, and then of course the Delci is like warmer and more bassy. I wouldn't say any of them are really like super high volume sets, especially the EW200, the second unit, but the Delci and the RDR2 does scale decently well and gets you to that volume where it's immersive enough, but not like quite brain blasting and not quite like EJ07 levels of like immersion. But before we move on, this video is sponsored by you guys. You guys know the drill. I buy most of the stuff I review in order to try to stay unbiased as much as possible, but I'm not rich, I can't buy everything, so I do need your guys' help, and you can help me by becoming a channel member. It's only $5 a month. I do regular giveaways there. But back to the video. So just like the EW200, the Delci is another Harman all-rounder in 2024, which is okay, but at least it's cheap, right? $75. Okay, that's crazy. It's on sale right now for $59, and I'm assuming it's just going to be on sale permanently like the P1 Max. But yeah, at $75 I would not recommend them since they sound like and perform very similar to the cheaper EW200 and the R2. Now on sale, is the Delci worth the extra $20 over the EW200 and the R2? Yes and no. Yes, because not only is the sound different enough, but the overall packaging is better. You get a case this time, a pretty nice cable, and the belt is made out of metal as well. But most importantly, the Delci fits the best and is the most comfortable for me personally. So I think that alone is worth the like extra $20 upgrade. And then you also have the nice accessories on top, and it doesn't look cheap like the R2. However, it does become a tougher sell given the Z300 exists, since they sound very close, but the Z300 is $35 and this is $59. Now the Delci is slightly more resolving and sharper in the notes, but do I think that it's worth paying $20 to $25 more for like a case and a slightly better resolution? I don't know, like I dig the overall look and accessories of the Delci, but build and cable wise, the Z300 is like pretty up there. It's also made out of metal, and the cable is like a different color. It's a little bit nicer in my opinion, but that's more preference, right? But in the case that you do want the case, like if you were to buy another case, it would be for another like $10 to $15. Then that puts like the blondes at a total combined value of around like $45, $50-ish, which is a lot closer to the $59 of the Delci now. And the extra bit of resolution on top of the Delci kind of makes it like actually justified if you were to go for a case. But what's for sure is if you already have the Z300, then the Delci is a pass in my opinion, and I would just say that for something else where the technical difference is more obvious, like a bigger jump, like the EM6L, the EA500LM for example, or the JD7 if you want more bass. But if you're coming from like QKZ HBB or something under $20, then I would say the Delci I guess is more justified if you do want the case. It is also technically better than the Z300, but the Z300 is the better value. I guess another factor is the look, because the Z300 does look, I guess it looks out there, like more bling bling than the Delci, which is like more low key. And the Delci does come with a case, so that on top of the better resolution, slightly better resolution, makes the Delci I guess more justified if that's your criteria. But like as an overall value, the Z300 is the better value just in terms of like sound, but it is a little bit more tricky this time because things aren't like one-to-one direction comparison. But I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching guys, and 7Hz we're on next. I'll see everyone in the next one. Shout out to Jeff Young, Rorax Cat, Dom Q, Star Buccaneers, Joel Pink, Discall Scaldus, B_Urac, Mystic Spoon Attack, Oh Really, Walker Standard, User, Ernest, Contain Guava Juice Gain, Patrick, Bell Cell Kel, Rosa the Kelf, Perry Jat, Polly, Mr. Gorillas, Anto Risto, Gis Sang Young, Tomat Pafrache, Ed, Harry, Christopher, Federico, Name, and Henry. Thank you guys so much for the support.